Boy, I think there's a couple things that have happened over the past couple days. I don't know. Maybe we should talk about it. All right, welcome into a Zero Technique Football podcast. I am your co-host, Ryan Stern. Join with me, Derek Mountain. How's it going, Derek?
I feel like I say it every year, but this free agent cycle is just the best. It's just so crazy.
I mean, there were a lot more surprises this year than there usually have been, because usually there are players that are linked to teams and they end up signing with one of those two or three teams that they're linked to for a month or so. There's been quite a few players who the teams that they've signed with so far have been major shocks.
And with it's fluid how crazy the cap is. You kind of can't keep track of where every team stands at. And we saw a team like the Patriots take advantage of the situation and just splurge, and we don't really see that. But I mean, it's a calculated choice. Belichick realizes this is probably never going to happen again, and he's shooting a shot. He's getting guys that might be a little bit overpaid, but he's bringing an influx of talent. So,
I don't know if you saw the stat that since free agency opened up, the amount of guarantees that the Patriots have handed out is more than half of what they've given out over the last 10 years.
Wow. I mean, they've made splashes before, just not like this where it's just nonstop. They might go in on one guy.
Yeah.
Like a Darrelle Revis, the trade for Randy Moss. I mean, they've been accustomed to bigger moves and maybe more at a discount with Tom Brady. But now it's just, I mean, I couldn't believe yesterday when I woke up to the Hunter Henry signing. It's crazy. I mean, they just keep piling on.
All right, so I mean, well, let's talk about the Patriots, because they've obviously been the biggest players in free agency and also with trades. They did bring some. I mean, we all know that they needed a quarterback. I just did not see Cam Newton being a part of this franchise after the year that we saw last year.
I think Belichick really, really likes Cam more than he lets on. I mean,
and we've heard Cam go out and say how much he absolutely loved his time in New England.
And we'll see what was more indicative of Cam last year. Was it pre-COVID Cam or was it post-COVID Cam? Because I think you got two totally different guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the throwing issues are still there, but you got a great situation offensive line as it looks on paper right now. They're fortifying the skill positions. That's probably the best 1-2 punch at tight end. They're still going to be a great running team. So the pieces are there. Cam has to deliver this year if that's who they go into the season as a starter.
And we heard all the excuses last year that he has no weapons around him. He's not going to have that excuse this year.
No.
With the talent that he has tight end. And to be honest, if you're a dynasty owner of either of those tight ends, that's about as bad a situation, because they're both going to be okay, but they're going to eat into each other's target share.
I think it's going to be a week-to-week thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think one week it might be Henry, the next Jonnu, and then the next Aguilar. I don't even know. I mean,
yeah, the Aguilar signing surprised me.
Yeah.
Did not hear the Patriots linked to him at all. Kendrick Bourne they brought in, and he's a very Patriot-esque signing.
Yes.
He's the kind of guy that they bring in that's under the radar, that just overproduces what everyone else is used to. And they got better on the offensive. They did Joe Tooney to a contract I didn't know the Chiefs could afford, but they end up trading. They traded for Trent Brown, who the best year of his career was New England. Goes and signs a big deal with the Raiders. then they reacquire him, restructure the deal, so it's even more team friendly. This is a Patriots team that's going to be back. I don't think that they're better than the Bills right now, but they're definitely going to be in the playoff conversation again.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely a 9 or 10 win team going into next year. They had a league high 8 opt outs last year, and they get those guys back next year, and that's going to be huge. I mean, I still have questions though. The 2 receiver signings were a little confusing to me. Aguilar at $13 million a year is a little rich for my liking. I know it's only 2 years, and they backloaded it, and they structured their contracts that way for a reason. A lot of them they aren't really paying their guarantees until the second and third year, depending on the contract, and that's just because of the given cap spike that every team's expecting. But with Aguilar, I don't know if he really moves the needle for $13 million a year. We just saw Curtis Samuel sign for 11. We just saw Corey Davis sign for 12. So I don't know if you got very good value at all there. Kendrick Bourne, I like for $7 million. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure he's that different from Jacoby Myers. I'm not sure that they're that different. Well, their role's going to be pretty similar to me. And to me, they still don't have an X receiver. I think Aguilar might be the closest guy to that. I think it's going to be a bunch of 12 personnel. I think they got a couple Zs. They got a couple guys who can put in the slot. But who's the guy that's going to win a one-on-one matchup, get that contested catch in the fourth quarter when you need it most? I don't know. And they're not going to be
They don't have the –
It's supposed to be
the wide
N'Keal
receiver.
Harry.
Right. They don't have the receiver that's going to be able to go against Tre'Davious White in week 16 and have a blow-up game. That's not what Nelson Aguilar is built to be. But I think he showed last year that, I mean, and obviously I think Derek Carr, we can safely say, is a better thrower of the football than Cam Newton is at this point of their respective careers. But Nelson Aguilar really took over that team. Everyone was expecting it to be Ruggs. You had the injury to Tyrell Williams. And then Nelson Aguilar who was hanging around in the background, and he really established himself. Do I think he got overpaid? Yeah. Especially when you see some of the contracts that you pointed out, the Curtis Samuel, who I thought was going to get more than Aguilar, Corey Davis, who I thought was going to get more. And I think that the biggest signing that nobody's talking about with the Patriots is Matt Judon. They get that edge guy that they just haven't had on a consistent basis year in, year out. Judon's going to, and he's a perfect fit in a Belichick scheme.
Yeah, he's another one that they probably overpaid for. He's not a number 1 rusher, but he's a really good number 2. And as you said, I think the fit's perfect in terms of all the games they want to play, how versatile all of their linebackers are. I do think that I have confidence that Belichick will maximize a guy like Judon, even a Jalen Mills, who I think similar to a Duggar or a Patrick Chung. I mean, I think he's a great depth player.
Yeah.
So the defensive signings I'm on board with. The receiver signings, I just need to see. I need to see how they're utilized.
And speaking of wide receivers, I mean, it's a little weird. No, we usually the top guys are the ones who set the tone for the rest of the free agents at how they're going to get paid. We're still seeing the top guys still out there. And I know the big report over the last hour or so that Rappaport sent out was that the Giants and Kenny Goliday are going to be meeting, and it seems like there's mutual interest. We saw over the past couple of days, Leonard Williams did sign an extension off of the franchise tag, and with how they structured it with the bonuses, it actually saved them about $8 million. They restructured Nate Solder, again saving close to $8 million there, freeing up a lot of money that a lot of Giants fans didn't think that they were going to have to go after someone like a Goliday. And Kenny Goliday is a player that is the type of player that the Giants need. And what bringing in Kenny Goliday means to them is they can actually go after the best defensive player at number 11, maybe even trade back.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they're almost held hostage right now that they have to take a receiver at 11.
Right.
And that's not a great position you want to go into if you're a pick 11. I mean, the draft's so unpredictable. You try to fill needs through free agency and draft value in the draft. I mean, when you play the need game in the draft, that's when you're reaching for these guys.
Right.
So if they were to get a guy like Goliday, I mean, he's a game changer. He's the only guy I think is really a true number one in this free agent class. I like Juju Smith-Schuster. I like Will Fuller. I like guys like Curtis Samuel and Corey Davis who've signed, but none of them are an alpha like Kenny Goliday, who can demand 8 to 10 targets a game and who's a game changer. He completely changes any offense, whoever he signs with.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm going through the some of the teams and the signings that they've made, and I see the Philadelphia Eagles, and then it goes right to the Washington football team. That's what happens when you are in cap hell.
Yep.
You're in Philly. What are the talks going around the town? Is there anybody that they can actually fit under the cap with any restructuring that could be done?
So they announced today that they're cutting Alshon Jeffrey and Malik Jackson. Not a surprise to anyone.
Right.
They still have work to do to get underneath the cap. There were talks of Jacoby Brissett maybe making a reunion with Nick Sirianni. He signed with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to have to bargain hunt in weeks 2 and 3. I think they're going to have to wait a really long time to get maybe these guys on a 1-year prove-it deal. Maybe someone like a Josh Reynolds is someone I've heard a lot. Just these depth signings, and it's not fun. But that's the position that Howie Roseman put the Eagles in. They are so strapped at the moment that they don't have any flexibility.
I mean, I can't say I feel bad. I've seen enough of the Eagles winning over the past decade or so. I'm okay with them being bad for as many years as the Giants have been bad. Give me 3 of your favorite signings that we haven't talked about yet.
Well, my favorite one so far is John Johnson to the Browns. I think by far.
Yeah.
I mean, at $11 million, that's borderline top 10 AAV among safeties, and he's I would say maybe a top 5 safety in all football. He's 25 years old. He absolutely took off with Brandon Staley last year. I'm curious to see how Joe Woods deploys him in Cleveland, but you have him. You trade for Ronnie Harrison last year. You get Grant Delpit back from injury, tearing his Achilles last year. I mean, they could be their base defense is going to be in dime, and they could be as multiple as it gets in terms of coverage and deploying a guy like Delpit and Johnson in different ways. And I think it could be really dynamic against passing teams like Kansas City and Buffalo. I'm really intrigued by that signing. What was your favorite one?
So it's fine because my favorite one is actually one that hurt me the most. And as a Giants fan, I wanted to see Dalvin Tomlinson stick around.
That was a great signing.
I thought that it was a great signing, a great fit. And I mean, this is Linval Joseph part 2.
Him and Pierce is going to be really, really good.
I mean, and it was a position of need. They got him at a price that I thought was very reasonable. 11 a year, 16 guaranteed. Dalvin Tomlinson is a really good football player. And I think he was overshadowed a little bit by the season that Leonard Williams had last year. But I think one of the reasons why Leonard Williams was able to have the season that he had was because of the presence of Dalvin Tomlinson on the inside. I thought that was a tremendous signing by Minnesota, who again,
They desperately need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What are two of your other favorite signings?
I'll go to the Jets. I do like the Corey Davis signing at the value, but Carl Lawson, I think that's a
Yeah,
home run.
yeah.
In terms of edge, he got, I think he was borderline top 20 in terms of AAV. And for free agency, I mean, that the Jets, when I saw that sign, it's like, oh man, how much did they overpay for Carl Lawson? 3 years, 45 million, all the guarantees in the first 2 years, so they're not binded to him for very long. He's still
He
young.
got they were able to get him for a year less and $1 million a year less than the Rams forked over to Leonard Floyd. And to
That
me,
was the worst.
I prefer
That was the worst signing.
Yeah, I prefer Carl Lawson 7 days a week, twice on Sunday.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's a big mistake Cincinnati let him go for a Trey Hendrickson. And people will look at sack numbers. Trey Hendrickson at 13.5, Carl Lawson at 5.5. And when you look at
who was playing opposite them.
I was going to say Trey Hendrickson was probably the third or fourth best guy in that D line, and Carl Lawson was the best player in that D line. A lot of Trey Hendrickson sacks were hustle and coverage sacks, and Carl Lawson, not the greatest sack numbers, but great pressure numbers, and he's just as dynamic against the run. I mean, they hit a home run there, and that is not what we're used to seeing in the Jets. I mean, him with Quinn and Williams, that could be a special defensive line.
One of the other signings that I really liked was the Carolina Panthers getting Hassan Reddick for 1 year, $8 million, only $6 million guaranteed. He reunites with Matt Rule, where he was able to flourish at Temple. He knows the system, and I think, well, I mean, he cashed in because of one game. You look at the season numbers for Hassan Reddick, and you look 12.5 sacks. That's a good game. Take away the Giants, and it's 6.5. But Hassan Reddick is a good player, and that number, you absolutely cannot go wrong trying to bring in a high upside pass rusher for only 1 year, $8 million.
Yeah. Absolutely. That, I mean, and we talked about it when the JJ Watt signing happened, that it was probably a sign that he was gone, but he was a perfect candidate for a 1 year prove it deal with the cap spike next year. Prove that he did last year was legit, and he's in line for a ton of money if he can replicate that at Carolina next year.
All right, one more. What's one more signing that stands out to you?
This is a guy that I've always liked, and I just think it was another team that doesn't necessarily do well, and I didn't like what they did with Trey Hendrickson, as I said, but I really like the Chidobe Awuzie signing. $7 million a year for 3 years. I don't think he was necessarily maximized at Dallas at all. I mean, he was kind of thrusted into that cornerback one role for his whole tenure there, and he battled with a lot of injuries, but he has the traits of a high-end 2 or a low-end 1 to me. And I think it's tough losing a guy like William Jackson, but to replace him with Awuzie and Mike Hilton in the slot for $13 million is good business in their secondary. So I really love the Awuzie signing for Cincinnati.
I just had it up. It was Shaquille Griffin with Jacksonville. I know a lot of people are like, what's Jacksonville going after someone like Griffin? They're in rebuild mode. Well, they have the money and they have to spend it. This is somebody that I think is grossly underrated in the scheme of the cornerback rankings in the NFL. And I think that it's a very, very reasonable number, getting him for under $15 million a year for a true number one corner that they haven't had since they traded away Jalen Ramsey.
Him and CJ Henderson could be really dynamic.
Yeah, and CJ Henderson needs to stay on the field.
Yep. When he played, he flashed. Yeah.
All right, so now we are going to get into the final. I said I wanted to do about 20 minutes on on free
right on the
agency.
dot.
Hit it right on the dot. So we're going to get into wrapping up the teams for the offseason outlook. So we're going to get the final 5 teams that we haven't talked about that have picks in the first round, plus 3 teams that don't have picks in the first round. So we're going to start off today with pick number 28. The New Orleans Saints, coming off of a 12-4 season, another NFC South division title, and for the first time in how many years? 13 years, they do not have Drew Brees lining up behind center.
One of the best free agent signings ever.
Oh yeah,
as we're talking about it,
right.
But yeah, the storyline for the Jets.
Yeah, the funny part about that is that he was all set to go to Miami.
Nick Saban said no.
My goodness. For a team that's still looking for the next Dan Marino.
Imagine. I was going to say, I mean, it's these little decisions. It's these little decisions. Imagine where Miami be and where New Orleans would be. I mean, New Orleans before Breeze was in the cellar of NFL franchises. I mean, they were absolutely a joke. Drew Brees changes the entire trajectory of everything. Him and the combination between him and Sean Payne, I mean, it changed everything. So it just goes to show, I mean, you never really know. He was never really fully unleashed in San Diego. You saw glimpses of it, but
yeah, but there was only one 5,000-yard passer in NFL history before Brees, and he did it, 5 times?
Yep.
Yeah, it's unreal. All right, so what's the offseason outlook looking for the Saints right now?
So Mickey Loomis has been playing cap gymnastics for the past month. They're still $7 million over the cap, but I mean they've had a lot of guys that they've had to cut in the process and restructure, and some of them we've seen sign. So they, as we talked about, Trey Hendrickson, free agent, signed with Cincy. Janoris Jenkins, they had to cut, signed with Tennessee. Emmanuel Sanders, they had to cut, signed with Buffalo. They had to cut Quan Alexander. Sheldon Rankins is a free agent. Jared Cook's a free agent. They re-signed Jameis, and they tagged Marcus Williams. But, I mean, this is a team that's lost a ton of snaps. Guys that were significant contributors, a lot of them are gone. They've been able to keep their best players for the most part. But, I mean, this is going to be a tough next couple years because they're kind of pushing the can down the road with all these restructures. They've been nailing their draft picks, which is, I mean, yeah. I continue to expect that with Sean Payne, but I mean, this is, I don't know. The core's still intact, but it's like, to me, they missed their window, and now it's who's the guy? Is Jameis the long-term answer? Is it Taysom Hill? I mean, they couldn't be more different. And they're expected to have a true quarterback competition. So I'm really curious to see how that unfolds. But they're in a really interesting spot.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned how they've nailed their draft picks. The one draft pick that they haven't nailed is one they actually traded up for. Marcus Davenport has been okay. Yeah. He just hasn't been healthy throughout most of his career, and when he's been out there, he hasn't been as effective as someone who you're giving up an extra first round draft pick for. They re-sign Jameis Winston and restructure this deal with Taysom Hill, and so this is one of the most confusing contracts I've ever seen in the. in my life, not even just the NFL, just in all of sports. This is every year is voidable, but with the bonuses, take me through this Taysom Hill contract.
So as you said, they can get out of it any year after this year. So they would accumulate about a $9 million dead money hit down to 6, down to 4, down to 2 for the next 4 years, just because that is the cap number and it's the cap number and the prorated bonus that is attributed to Taysom in his contract. But yeah, everything else from what Andrew Brandt described it as, who I would highly recommend as a Twitter follower. As a Twitter follow, he was an executive with Green Bay, former NFL agent. He basically just said it's phony money. So, to my understanding, it's, as you said, all voidable. They're not really going to pay him $100.
It's a 1 year deal.
They're not really going to pay him $140 million, but it gives them an avenue to a contract if Taysom is the guy, if he's their quarterback moving forward. So that's kind of all this is laying down the groundwork if he does happen to beat out Jameis as their quarterback next year.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've ever seen a team give out so big money to 2 quarterbacks in one offseason. And I mean, Jameis was 12.5, I think. 1 year, 12.5 million for.
I think he could go up to 12.5. I don't know what the base salary is.
Who wins that job?
I hope Jameis, but we all know how Sean Payton feels about Taysom Hill. I mean, I just don't think that style of play quarterback sustainable over a full season. I mean, I don't love the gadget use of Taysom Hill. I didn't like when they yanked out Drew Brees out of the game, but with Jameis Winston, it might make a little bit more sense just because he's not nearly as reliable. And I mean, make no mistake about it, they're not going to be dropping back 30, 35 times a game if Jameis Winston is their quarterback, kind of like the offenses we saw with Brees. I think it's going to have to be a lot different, and I think it's going to have to be a lot more run-centered, and maybe Taysom Hill is a bigger piece of that equation. But you go with the guy that was the first overall pick. He has the pedigree. He was on track to being a solid starter before Bruce Arians came in the picture, and he led the league in interceptions. Not defending Jameis and what he did 2 years ago, but I still think there's a lot of potential that could be unleashed, especially Sean Payne. I mean, I was just really surprised that they went with Taysom Hill in relief last year when Brees got hurt. I just think your offense has way more potential with the Jameis Winston, but I can't guarantee that with Sean Payne.
Yeah, it's he really fits the term mad genius.
So Jameis's contract is the base salary is $5.5 million, which is, I mean, that's bottom 10 quarterback. That's like rookie money. So I mean, that is nothing.
All right, let's move on. We have at pick number 29, the Green Bay Packers coming off an NFC North Championship, 13-3 season. They see Aaron Rodgers win another MVP. What's the offseason outlook looking like right now for Green Bay?
So they are also over the cap, just slightly at $3 million over the cap. They just re-signed Aaron Jones to a 4-year, $48 million deal with all his guarantees in the first 2 years. I think it's $20 million guaranteed. Corey Linsley was the big loss to them. He got signed with the Chargers the first day of free agency. Kirksey has gone to Houston, their inside backer. Ricky Wagner's a free agent. Kevin King's a free agent. And they placed a second-round tender on restricted free agent Robert Tonyan, who had a nice little breakout season. So, again, they're one of these teams that can't really be that active in free agency. They're going to have to get under that cap number if they want to do anything, or their contracts will be voided. But, yeah, I mean, I think with Green Bay, I mean, we can go back to last year. They just have to get more impact players in the draft. I don't think there are any needs that really stick out that much, except for maybe I look at the defensive side of the ball. But, I mean, they probably need another corner. They probably need another receiver, but they just need contributors. I mean, they draft – the first 3 picks are a backup quarterback, a third-string running back, and a fullback.
He'll be a backup this year.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's the second string now.
Yeah, Jamal Williams
left
in Detroit.
So, yeah, I mean, can you imagine if they actually picked 3 starters or 2 starters in those 3 picks, 3 guys that would play? I mean, that's really the difference between being in the NFC Championship and winning a Super Bowl. Just ask the Bucs. They get Wirfs and Winfield. I mean, not saying that's a normal thing to happen. It's not.
Right.
But even if you get guys to just plug holes and contribute a little bit, I mean, it goes such a long way. So, I mean, my big thing with the Packers is just do something. Help Aaron Rodgers out right now. Maximize Aaron Rodgers right now, please.
Yeah, the Aaron Jones, and I get it. Aaron Jones is a really good player. He's not the kind of player that I would deal $12 million a year to when I'm in cap hell.
Yeah,
I know that the structuring of the deal in terms of bonuses in the first year is going to help them out. But how many times do we see running backs on their second contract have huge steps backwards? Just look at Todd Gurley, who I think is a very fair comparison to someone like an Aaron Jones. Physical runner who can run inside, outside, and just once it falls apart, it really falls apart. And it just doesn't make sense knowing that they invested such a high pick in A.J. Dillon last year.
Yep.
For them to then go and invest that type of money, because I mean that now makes your top 2 picks in one draft irrelevant for 4 years.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you reward your players from within. So on the surface, I like Aaron Jones getting paid. He's a really, really good player. But as you said, the numbers aren't great in terms of paying running backs big time money. The only 2 guys that really come to mind that are in that ballpark that are really hitting their value are Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry so far. Everything else has been, I mean, teams haven't been too lucky with giving running backs this kind of money. They must really not like A.J. Dillon, or they must really like Aaron Jones. I would have given that money to Corey Linsley. I just think having that centerpiece, and I mean, he was a second-team All-Pro last year. For my money, he's a top 3 center in all of football. You keep your offensive line intact. You can hunt in the 3rd or 4th round for a guy that complements A.J. Dillon, maybe a pass catcher, someone like a Michael Carter at a UNC. And, I mean, let's go. I mean, maybe get a corner and a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. I mean, now they got to – do you find a center? Do you move Elgin Jenkins to center and find a guard in the draft? That's not something that I really want to do if I'm the Packers. I just think running back's a lot easier to plug and play. So I'm with you. I mean, I don't think the value of $12 million is that bad because they could get out of it in 2 years. But given the circumstances and the context, letting Corey Linsley go, I don't agree with the move.
So where do they look in the draft? Because I think that I think it has to be trenches. Now, because we're still up in the air with Bakhtiari, right?
Yeah, at least the start of the season,
right?
For sure.
So we don't know what the status of David Bakhtiari is. We saw them lose Corey Linsley, so offensive line definitely has to be a thought. And they were one of the worst rush defenses in the entire league last year. So which side of the ball in the trenches are they going to prioritize it earlier?
And we saw Kevin King just get roasted for an entire game and on their way to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, they could go corner too, really, in the first half. They love a guy. I mean, I think a guy like Alex Leatherwood might be a little rich for the end of round 1, but he could play inside and outside.
He won't be there at the end of round 2, though.
No, I was going to say he's definitely not going to be there at the end of round 2. So maybe that's a spot where they trade back. And because, I mean, we've seen it in the past. A lot of teams that maybe are hunting for that last quarterback like to hunt in the end of the first round, pick up that extra year of control, of team control. But yeah, I mean, as you said, I think defense is best player available if they want to go there. I still think they need more. They still need more pressure from the edge besides Darius Smith. I mean, Preston Smith just really didn't get it done last year. So I think that's a spot they could look to. So yeah, I mean, I think best player available on defense, or if they fall in love with guard, or I mean, a tackle that can play guard is also a good play there. But yeah, they could go a lot of different ways.
I mean, someone like Elijah Vera Tucker just makes so much sense. I just am hearing that a lot of NFL teams think that he could be like a top 20 pick.
I was going to say, I doubt he'll be there. I mean, he is – I think he's a really good tackle and could be an all-pro guard. I mean, he's that good. He's so smooth. He's so athletic. That would be best-case scenario for Green Bay. You get a guy like him, and then losing a guy like Lindsley doesn't look that bad.
Right. All right, moving on. We have at pick number 30 is the Buffalo Bills coming off their first AFC East championship in 25 years. They 13-3 record. We saw the real outbreak of Josh Allen, complemented with the acquisition of Stephon Diggs, and they didn't really lose a whole lot of key players to this team.
No. The only two big contributors are John Brown and Quinn Jefferson, who both signed in Vegas, actually. But they've actually retained a lot of their own guys. I mean, on the offensive line, they re-signed John Feliciano and Darrell Williams. Both enjoyed nice little breakouts. And they re-signed Levi Wallace at corner today. And
Matt Milano too.
And Matt Milano, who, I mean, he's been unbelievable for them too. Yeah. Their defense was much steadier, much better once he came back from injury last year. The only significant contributing factor, and I think contributing is putting it nicely, that's a free agent, Josh Norman. I mean, they've really done a good job of keeping their own. Brandon Beane has really set a good precedent there, and to me, they're putting on the finishing touches, and we've heard the rumblings. They were in really aggressively with J.J. Watt. There were rumblings this week that they made a really enticing offer to Rob Gronkowski to come back to his hometown. I mean, those are the kind of signings that championship-level football teams make. There are rumors that there could be a trade in the works for Zach Ertz. I'm not sure. Depending on the compensation, I'm not sure that moves the needle that much for their offense. But, I mean, these are the kind of moves that Beane's looking at, these impact-type players that can really set them over the edge and put them over the top against the Kansas City next year.
Yeah, and you look at with John Brown, and I know Isaiah McKenzie is a free agent. I wouldn't even rule it out, them bringing him back. The Rangers, just so you know, are now up 8-0 on the Flyers.
Is that good?
Yeah,
that's not bad. It's not bad.
8-0. I think Zibanejad has 4.
Quinn's turning around a little bit.
Yeah. No, Quinn's been on the bench. The entire Rangers coaching staff is in COVID protocol. They brought up the Hartford Wolfpack coaching staff and Chris Drury, who's the
no way
the associate GM. They're on the bench today.
There's a cry for help.
Yeah, maybe Quinn gets fired. Hopefully,
there's a cry for help.
Oh my goodness! So Isaiah McKenzie, I think I think he fits what Buffalo wants to do. I think he's going to be more valuable to Buffalo than he would to any other team. He was on Good Morning Football earlier this week, and he was stating how much he wanted to return to Buffalo. I think they find a way to get that done. So you still have Stephon Diggs, you have Cole Beasley, you have
They signed Emmanuel Sanders.
That's right. They did sign Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders is an upgrade to John Brown.
Yeah, he is. I mean, availabilities. I mean, just availability alone. And I love John Brown, but you see a list of the quarterbacks that Emmanuel Sanders has had to play with the last few years, and you get really excited with him playing with Josh Allen. I mean, it's been a long and ugly list of Peyton Manning towards the end of his career, Trevor Siemian, Jimmy Garoppolo, dead arm Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, and that whole Pandora's box last year quarterback for the Saints. So I mean, he's a sneaky candidate for 800-900 yards in Buffalo next year.
Oh, absolutely. And the guy that I don't think anybody's talking about is Gabe Davis. I think Gabe Davis has a chance to be a star once he's able to see the field, because once again, this is a very crowded room. But I think he has all the makings to be a really good football player. So
absolutely,
this just in terms of the draft, it screams BPA. Doesn't matter what position, you just get better because you don't have a whole lot of holes. Maybe cornerback, it would if there is one hole that they have, that would be it. Otherwise, you're just doing whatever you can do to make your team better. Yeah,
I was going to say, I think maybe running back, but they've invested in running back the last 2 years, and they're not really a run-heavy team. I think they're
9-0. 9-0.
Oh my God.
8-0. 8-0.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see them going after a tight end in free agency, as we've heard, or a guy like a Brevin Jordan in round 2, maybe.
Right.
I think that would be an intriguing fit. Just to add a little more speed across the middle, just because I think they're lacking a little there with their tight end room now, and they moved Lee Smith this week. So
I couldn't even believe that Lee Smith was still in the NFL when I heard that move. I'm like,
he had a touchdown last year. He had a red zone league touchdown like late in the year, and I had the exact same reaction. I was like, why is Lee Smith? And he literally is huge. He's like 270. I was like, who is that offensive tackle? It's like, oh, that's Lee Smith. Like, of course.
It is 9-0. Just so you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice.
To me, a guy that I've really started to fall in love with, who could be there at that time, is Greg Newsome, the cornerback out of Northwestern. I think that's a slam dunk pick if he makes it there.
What do you think about Najee making it there? You think he has a shot making it there?
So I actually in my mock draft that you can find on backsportspage.com, I actually had them taking Najee Harris.
I mean, you have that perimeter attack.
I had Newsome off the board.
Najee?
I had Newsome off the board, but the team that I had taking him was Jacksonville, which with the Griffin signing may make that not as necessary a pick as it was last week. And it's funny because I posted it into a couple Facebook groups, and one Bills fan came out and said, "We do not need a running back." I said, "Yeah, you do."
Yeah, you do. Are you kidding me? Najee is Devin Singletary plus Zach Moss and then some. I mean, can you imagine that passing attack and then being able to run it up the middle with Najee? I mean, how do you defend that?
Not to mention he might be the best pass catching back.
Exactly.
In the draft. His routes for someone his size out of the backfield, it should be illegal.
It's a dream. I mean, that fit is a dream.
Yeah. Watch out. Watch out if that happens. All right. Then we move on to the Super Bowl teams. So we got the Chiefs, then the Bucs. The Chiefs coming off back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. They went 14-2 this year, and just did not have it. We obviously saw a non 100% Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. What's the offseason outlook right now for Kansas City?
So they're a little over, or they're a little under the cap at $4 million. Biggest news for them the last couple of weeks before the free agent signings was cutting both of their tackles, Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. That really was a big shock to everyone. Sammy Watkins is in the market. Safety Daniel Sorensen, Bashad Breeland, Alex Okafor. They recently released Damian Williams and Austin Ryder, center for the past couple years. He is hitting the market. He's not expected to re-sign. So they plugged up two of their guard spots. They, as Ryan said, they signed Joe Thuney and they signed Kyle Long today. So those are going to be their starting guards moving forward. The tackles are another issue. We don't know how they're going to approach that. I expect Lucas Niang to be the right tackle. That was what I came out of when they cut Mitchell Schwartz. They must really like Niang, who was out for the season last year, third round pick last year. But do you go into this draft without a blindside tackle for Patrick Mahomes? Is that possible?
I mean, the writing is on the wall, and for them to need a one or two tackles in 1 year
and a center.
This is the year to do it. If you need to fill those spots in the draft, because this is a really, really deep tackle class. They can end up with someone like a Liam Eichenberg down there at 31. And in a normal year, I mean, Liam Eichenberg, a lot of people are comparing to Mike McGlinchey, who went number 9 overall. Yeah. This is not your normal tackle class. You really only have the one elite player at the position, but and then do you still have the second tier as just Slater and Darisaw, or do you have other players that you think are good enough to be in that tier with them?
I think Vera Tucker's like right there as a tackle. As a guard, I mean, he's the best in the class by far. I think Tevin Jenkins is right there, depending on the team. He wouldn't fit in Kansas City necessarily. I think he would be a lot better suited in a power gap scheme team that is run first, like a Baltimore or a San Francisco. But I mean, I put him right there. I could see him being a very solid pro. I think Eichenberg's on the outside. Leatherwood is on the outside, but compared to last year, it's what you said. I don't think the top's as good. It's not nearly as good for the first 3 or 4 tackles, but tackles 4 to 8, 4 to 9 are a lot better. It's really deep.
Yeah. You're going to be able to get a starting left tackle in the second round.
Yeah. I mean, that is a scary proposition, though, with Mahomes back there. I mean, you're going to be dropping back 40 times a game. I don't know. I'm surprised that they signed Kyle Long before. I mean, and I don't know what Brett Veach did, but I'm surprised they didn't trade for Rodney Hudson at center in Vegas. I know it's not common to do divisional trades, but they were going to cut him, and then they tried to get compensation for him. So I'm not sure necessarily.
They got compensation from Arizona.
They got a third. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen that. A guy who was about to get released. Usually it's just a 6th or 7th.
It was announced that they were going to cut him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's my least favorite move. I mean, they got a third out of it, but like that move just makes 0 sense. That guy Ronnie Hudson's the best center in football. Vegas is only going backwards. That's another conversation.
I mean, they went from having one of the top 5 offensive lines to the way it looks right now is a bottom 5.
I mean, they have Cole Miller, who was the worst of those 5. They re-signed Richie Incognito, who who's been one of Mayock's only good signings really since he's
Yeah.
been the GM. But then other than that, like who I don't know who's starting for them. So I mean, it's similar in Kansas City, but I mean, at guard you have nothing to worry about with Tooney and Kyle Long. You're going to be that's as good an interior as it gets.
Yep. All right, and now on to the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They took care of their own.
Yeah.
that's and you know that was expressed by Tom Brady. He said you keep this team together no matter what.
I mean, we talked about it. I did not envision them keeping Godwin, Shaq Barrett, Levante David. Who am I missing?
Gronk.
I mean, they still have Fournette and AB, but I mean, those are the biggest guys.
To be honest, those are the two most replaceable of the guys that won't be back.
Definitely. I mean, you tag Godwin, you sign Levante David and give him a 2-year deal that has 3 voidable years in the end. So his cap number this year, I think, is like $3 or $4 million. Shaq Barrett, you signed to a monster deal. You bring his cap number down to I think $5 million this year. I mean, it was they're going to pay the price a year or two down the road. They're kicking the can like a lot of these teams are, but
that'll be when Tom Brady retires and he doesn't
I was
care
gonna say,
anymore.
like, doesn't matter. I mean, they've made this their window. It's going to be the next 2 to 3 years, and they're going to live and die by their own players. Which, I mean, I love that philosophy. That's what the best teams do. They reward the guys from within, and I mean, seeing a guy like Shaq Barrett get paid $72 million, they've been so good to him. They gave him a 1-year flyer 2 years back, and he has just thrived there. So yeah, we'll see. They're going to be a contender next year. They're going to be. I expect them to be better, at least offensively. I still think they have some questions on defense in terms of bringing a guy like Sue back and how they progress. But I mean, this is going to be a really good football team next year. I mean, their offense can only get better in terms of chemistry, I think.
We also saw them be able to resign Minter and Stinney, 2 guys that are under the radar that quietly had really good seasons.
I was going to say Stinney was great in the Super Bowl, plugging in for Alex Kappa.
Obviously, I think it just comes down to BPA again for Tampa. This could very well be find somebody who wants to trade back into the first round and load up on picks maybe a year or 2 down the road, because there isn't a whole lot that they need.
No, I could see maybe interior D-line. I could see running back if Fournette isn't retained. But yeah, other than that, they could really do whatever they want.
Someone like ATN.
Yeah, I mean, they need a pass catching back. That's probably the one need where I'm like, because Fournette and Ronald Jones really struggle catching the ball out of the field. They've been rumored to being linked to James White out of New England, which would be, I mean, with Tom Brady, that would be a perfect fit, obviously. But if they don't do that, a guy like ETN or Javonte Williams, like, whoa, I mean, that is like, that's kind of the only thing that I look at their offense and I'm like, they need a pass catcher out of the backfield.
All right, so now we're going to take a look at the 3 teams that don't have picks in the first round and see where they go from here. And the first one is the one we're going to struggle with the most, and that's the Houston Texans. They would have had the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft, but they traded it for, along with other picks, for Laramie Tunsil. They were 4-12 last year, and they've really been the talk of the offseason with this whole Deshaun Watson saga, or whatever you want to call it. It just it has not shown a good light upon Houston, Texas.
No, and we saw the allegations today. Not going to speak on that because we just need more details to follow. It's pretty sketchy to say the least. But John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, the beat reporter for the Texans, he tweeted today that Casario specifically and the Houston Texans have not spoken about, they haven't been nearly as adamant about keeping Deshaun and haven't mentioned not trading him since January. And he contended that they're going to trade him. That's from what I can see, pure speculation. We'll see.
So McLean said that?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was at the very beginning of these rumors.
He was
he was
have a
the
better
most
chance of being
adamant
head coach.
and he was. I had never seen anyone more adamant about saying he's not going to get traded. He said, "I am more likely to be traded than Deshaun Watson."
Yeah, he said, "I'm more likely to be hired as a head coach than Deshaun to be traded." And I mean, a little hyperbole there, but obviously Houston initially, I'm sure in January they didn't want to trade him. I'm sure they thought they could make amends and make the situation better, and it's just not getting better. And what they've done this offseason, I don't know. I don't think it helps. I really don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're signing a bunch of these declining older guys to these, I mean, strangely 1 to 2 year deals. They're not even minimum deals, but it's guys like, I mean, Mark Ingram. They trade for Marcus Cannon, Malik Collins, Terrence Brooks. Like I don't really like they're acting like they're putting on the finishing touches, and they didn't just go 4-12 last year. I don't understand what they're doing. I mean, I don't know. They don't have a pick. I mean, their first pick's pick 67. That's their only pick in the top 100. So I mean, maybe that's their vision of plugging needs in as immediately as possible. But they get all their picks back next year. To me, they should just be tanking, and they should be exploring options with Deshaun Watson because his value is only going to get worse from here on out. It's going to reek of desperation. I think they would have been a lot better pressed to explore trading him in January, but here we are. So
let's say, because Ian Rappaport tweeted out earlier today, right around noontime. He said that based on conversations with teams who would really like Deshaun Watson, the Texans have been firm in having no interest in discussing a trade.
It's insane. That is insane. I mean, if they want to wait it out till August, I mean, good for them. But how is it going to get better? It's not going to happen through the draft. They already hired a coach that he doesn't like. He had no say in that process.
But if you're holding on to the pick that late, that means you're trading him to a team that he's going, whatever team he goes to, he's going to make them better. So you're not going to trade him to a team that's going to have either the second or third pick in the draft, both of which right now they could trade Deshaun Watson to the Jets, who are sitting at 2, to the Dolphins, who are sitting at 3, and get a king's ransom for. And I mean, you hear these terms that have been floated around, and I even heard last night that Watson doesn't want New York and he doesn't want Miami, that he wants San Francisco,
Carolina.
Was it Carolina? It may have been Carolina, the other team. But for someone who's being as
yeah, I don't know if he could be picky.
But with the Texans, you can easily get from the Jets. You can get number 2 plus another 1, maybe even you can.
They get 3. They would get 3, I think.
You can probably get 2, 23, next year's 1, and one of the Jets' second-round picks from this year.
And probably a player. I mean, we heard the Bears offer for Russell Wilson. 3 1s, a 3, and 2 starters.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson's a lot more attractive than Russell Wilson. I mean, I think they would get 3 1s.
The number 2 or number 3 pick are a lot different than the number 20 pick.
No, you're right. But I mean, Deshaun Watson's 25, just led the league in passing with that dumpster fire of a team. That's a guy. I mean, if you're a team like the Bears, and they don't have the capital to get him, but if you're a team like the Jets, who has just swung and missed the quarterback every single year, how many first round picks is enough? Because to me, it's like if the Texans called me up and said, here's Deshaun Watson, give me 5 first round picks, I'd probably do it, because it's like I am set for the next 10 to 15 years and we're building around Deshaun Watson, and I don't have to worry about, is Zach Wilson the guy? Am I trying to fix Sam Darnold? Kind of jumping through these hoops and making these guys work. We know that Deshaun Watson is going to work. And at a team like even in Miami too, as we talked about with Breeze, I mean, that's a team that hasn't found a quarterback in forever. So I don't know. I wouldn't skimp when it comes to the Deshaun Watson. I would be really aggressive if I was one of those teams, or a Carolina.
And then you have Miami, and if I'm Miami, I say have Tua, have number 3, have number 18, and take a second round pick. Take your second round pick back. You mean to get 3 picks and Tua? So that means they can get number 3.
That's 2 top 5 picks.
Yeah,
Tua's a top 5 pick. I mean, would he be a top 5 pick last year? I don't know, but I still think he has promise. If that's a guy that Houston likes, I mean, that's a ton. That's a ton to get.
All right, moving on. We have the Seattle Seahawks will be the next team up. They would have been picking at number 23. That was traded to the Jets in the Jamal Adams trade. They won 12-4. Another NFC West championship. And here another team that's had some saga this year with their quarterbacks.
Yeah, they're kind of prolonging the inevitable. It feels like to me. I mean, this is the year that they have to figure it out with Russ. They've done nothing in free agency. They have a little over $10 million in cap, but they've cut Carlos Dunlap. They've let Shaquille Griffin walk. Carlos Hyde's gone to Jacksonville. Not that he was a big part, but Iupati.
He was actually pretty
retired.
Decent last year.
He was. Iupati retired. Chris Carson's a free agent. They're not going to be better next year. I mean, at least on the surface, there's still a lot of time, and they're not doing anything to help Russ. I mean, his one big request has been fortifying the offensive line, and he has been hit too much. They've done nothing to fix that.
Nope.
I actually am curious to see the fit with Shane Waldron from LA as the offensive coordinator next year. I want to see him in a McVay offense, because I kind of think that utilizes his best skill sets the most, moving the pocket.
Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle getting Shane Waldron from LA.
Okay, because you had McVay. That's right. With McVay, he was with McVay. Yeah.
I want to see him like play action, boot action, move in the pocket. I mean, I think Russ would be really good there, but I mean, he also has his demands, and rightfully so. I mean, they never have invested in the offensive line. He's been the most sacked quarterback in NFL history through 9 years. It's not that close. I think it's 394 times. Not that close either. So they can't do anything between now and the draft to really solidify that offensive line. I don't see how Russ comes back after this year. I think this is kind of it. I think if they don't figure it out, he's going to force his way out.
Yeah, I mean, they only have 1 pick in the top.
They have 4 picks. They have 50. They picked 56, but they have 4 picks because they traded 2 of them for Jamal Adams. They had the Carlos Dunlap trade. I mean, they have nothing.
Yeah, and number 56 is the only pick they have in the top 110.
Yep.
Not
looking good.
No, not looking good at all. And let's wrap it up with the final team, and that's the team that we just briefly mentioned, the Los Angeles Rams. They had their big move was via trade, upgrading the quarterback with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, We talked about John Johnson. That's a big piece to lose. They re-signed Leonard Floyd. It seemed a little rich. They traded Michael Brockers today to Detroit for a 7th-round pick.
Did you hear
Oh yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
Brockers comment after
That's so
after
tough.
the trade, and now he has to go back and play with Goff?
That's so tough. Oh my gosh.
That's
Yeah.
why. What's that? Herm Edwards. Don't press send.
Oh yeah.
Don't press send.
Yeah. I mean, they're such an interesting case study. I mean, we'll see. They're still 16 million over the cap, so they still have work to do. Their numbers get down from Brockers. I think they save 7 or 8 million, so they're really it's a little less than 10 million. But I mean, they're such an interesting team, and they lost Morgan Fox today. Austin Blythe, their centers hitting the market. So I mean, they still have some needs to fill. I would have just re-signed Johnson with, I mean, less money than Floyd. I mean, he got 3 for 33 in Cleveland. Floyd got 4 for 64 to stay. That was a curious signing to me. So we'll see how that goes. But they don't have first round pick. They have their second round pick, and they have 2 comp picks. So at 102 and 104. So they've been pretty good in the middle rounds. I mean, this is a really top-heavy team, though. As I said, like a really interesting case study. I mean, we'll see, but like the top 5, top 6 players on their team are unbelievable, and the middle of their roster is going to be a lot of guys on the minimum and rookie contracts. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes if they can replicate the success they had last year.
Yeah, and so all right, so we're gonna look at what what they could potentially do in the draft, or where do you think is their biggest need that they're gonna look to try and fix? Obviously, let's see, they have number 57. They did get number 89 in the trade, I believe.
Okay.
Or no, that was they traded that away in the Stafford deal.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
Yep.
So again, but they do have 2 comp picks at the end of the 3rd round. So but this is again a team that doesn't have a whole lot that they only have 1 top 100 pick. Tough to build when you don't have that much.
And how many assistants did the Rams lose this year? It was like insane. They lost, I want to say it's like 8 or something crazy. Here it is 7. They lost 7 assistants. I mean, that's more than half your staff. That's insane.
And that's a huge deal. The coaching, the consistency with coaching in the NFL really plays a big part into the success of some of these teams. Right.
Look at the Bills. Look at the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have lost nobody. Like a guy like the Enemy's been on their staff for 3 years, and he is arguably one of the best offensive coordinators in football. You see it with the Bucs. They're going to have the exact same coaching staff next year. It's a huge deal. And you lose Brandon Staley, who was the play caller of the number 1 defense last year. So to me, just off the bat, the defense is going to take a step or 2 back. I mean, losing a guy like John Johnson and then Brandon Staley calling the defense, leading the defense, those are huge losses. So we'll see. I mean, I think on offense, they're in pretty good shape. They definitely would be smart to look at center or tackle. I expect Rob Havenstein to probably be a cap casualty here to get under the cap, the right tackle. Yeah. So, I mean, I think perimeter, they're looking great. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, you and me are high on Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers in the backfield, they're fine. But offensive line and then defense. So, I mean, we'll see. But it's another team like Seattle. They're kind of strapped. They kind of are what they are at this point.
The big difference between them and Seattle is they have 2 absolute elite defensive players in Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, who are at the top of their position ranks. Seattle just doesn't have that to fall
They
back
thought
on.
Jamal was, but he's not.
No, he is not. All right, that is going to wrap it up for another episode. Derek, wishing you all the best, my friend. You know you're always welcome on. Stay tuned. We're going to have great content. Make sure you're following Derek at Derek Mountain. I'm at rstern33. Follow Backsports Page on all social media at Backsports Page. Derek, we'll always be in touch. All right, bud.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right,
you,
be
Ryan.
well.